The Apostles of Infinite Love are a cult that began in 1962 and are based in the mountains of Quebec. They started as a Catholic splinter group formed by excommunicated French priest Michael Collin. Believing that he was the true heir to the church and that he was receiving messages directly from the Virgin Mary, Collin gave himself the name Pope Clement XV and presided over a reign of kidnapping, sexual abuse and extortion. The church soon split, however, as Michael feuded with a fellow founding member named Jean-Gaston Tremblay, who declared himself to be Pope Gregory XVII in 1969. He died in 2011, but not before being the subject of a 34-year investigation that led to a massive raid in 1999 and ended with all of the charges being dropped. As of this time, the cult is apparently at a very low point, with no new leader and a number of members having left. The Church Universal and Triumphant, or CUT, was founded in 1975 as an offshoot of a different movement, Summit Lighthouse. Founder Elizabeth Clare Prophet pitched herself and her husband as messengers of the Ascended Masters, a set of spiritually awakened ancient beings, central to Theosophy belief. For good measure, they also throw in elements of Christian Science, the I Am movement and Mormon-style doomsday prepping. The prophets grew vastly rich, wealthy enough to buy large spreads of land in the Santa Monica Mountains and in Montana, while members drove themselves into debt, building fallout shelters and paying huge sums of money to reserve a spot in the post-nuclear war society. Due to causes of ill health, the prophet retired in 1999 and died 10 years later. Since then, the church has gone through many arguments about who will become the successor, as well as many legal problems. But despite this, members still meet on a regular basis to this day. Based in Florida, Kashi Ashram was founded in 1976 by a high school dropout named Joyce Green, who called herself Majaya Sati Bhagavati. Believing she was a conduit for both Jesus Christ and several Hindu deities, she first purged herself of extra weight on the Christ diet, then formed an ashram that promotes compassion and understanding while living a community-driven, minimalist lifestyle. Sounds nice, right? Well, the harsh reality is, it's really not. Former members of the Kashai movement have accused the group of child abuse, paedophilia, extortion, forced marriages, and of brainwashing members into believing Ma Jaya was a god. Those who weren't pure enough, however, were beaten, and in some cases, even raped, with newborn children often legally handed over to her for care. Majaya herself died in 2003, but the movement continues to this day as members believe she has simply left her human body. The Ku Klux Klan, or more simply known as the KKK, refers to three distinct secret movements at different points in time in the history of America. Each has advocated extremist views and positions, such as white supremacy, white nationalism, anti-immigration, and anti-Catholicism. Historically, the KKK used terrorism and both physical assault and murder against the groups and individuals that they opposed. All three movements have called for the purification of America and are all considered right-wing extremist organisations. However, in each era, membership was extremely secretive, and estimates of the total number of followers were highly exaggerated by both the friends and the enemies. The followers of the Heaven's Gate cult believe that enlightenment and salvation can only be achieved by fleeing Earth before the Great Recycling. Since leaving the Earth is somewhat problematic, the leaders of the cult preached that suicide was the answer, and that leaving your body was to mean reaching enlightenment. Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles were the leaders behind this strange cult. They even prepared videos on how to leave your earthly flesh behind and distributed them between the members. Then in 1997, Halley's Comet arrived, and Applewhite convinced his followers that a spaceship was trailing the comet, and those who followed him into death would be saved. He then ordered 38 people to commit suicide in San Diego, when he claimed the comet was the sign that they had all been waiting for. Congregation for the Light avoids the backwater locations common to many cults, and instead it is based in the heart of Manhattan. But it has many similarities with cults, including an all-powerful control by one man, bizarre racial theories about Aryans and Atlantis, doomsday prepping, a complex mythology involving owls, strange medical views such as cancer being caused by bad karma, and a powerful grip on the sex lives of its members. They also marry old men off to young girls, and it enjoys a tax-free exempt status as a religion. The Light itself only has a few hundred members, as they're kept in virtual seclusion, often being born into the cult by member parents, with most of the money they make being from the estates of dead members in which they pillage. Bohemian Grove is a 2,700-acre campground located at Bohemia Avenue in Monte Rio, California. Belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club, in mid-July each year, Bohemian Grove hosts more than a 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. These include Preston Hotchkiss, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, and Glenn T. Seaborg. The tradition of a summer encampment was established 6 years after the club was formed in 1872. From 1893, Bohemians rented their current location, and in 1899 they purchased it from Melvin Cyrus Meeker, a man who had developed a successful logging operation in the area. Gradually, over the next decades, members of the club bought the land surrounding the location to the perimeter of the basin in which it resides. But being a private club, only active members and their guests are allowed to visit the Grove, which during the midsummer encampment are limited due to the small size of the facility. Since the forming of the club, the mascot has been an owl, symbolising knowledge. A 30-foot hollow owl statue made of concrete over steel supports stands at the head of the lake in the Grove. The statue was designed by sculptor and 2-time club president Haig Pattergain and constructed in the late 1920s. The club's patron saint is John of Nepomuc, whose legend says suffered death at the hands of a Bohemian monarch rather than disclose the confessional secrets of the Queen. A large wooden carving of St. John in cleric robes with his index finger over his lips stands at the shore of the lake, symbolising the secrecy kept by the Grove attendees throughout its long history. One of the most notorious cults of the modern era, Realism, began in 1974 with a Frenchman named Claude Varillon. Calling himself Real, Varillon claimed that he had had a vision of an alien spacecraft in southern France, and that it was full of beings who told him that humans were the future and handed him a Bible. Over the next 6 days, the leader of the aliens, named Yahweh, explained to Varillon how the Old Testament was actually a record of humanity's early days, and that he must build an embassy to welcome the aliens when they fully return. For the next 3 decades, Raelians were basically a kooky hippie cult that worshipped space aliens. They opposed violence, championed science, and liked to be naked and have sex with a lot of people. They became extremely popular in Asia and have amassed a following of roughly 20,000 people to this day. Also known as the Body of Christ and Garbage Eaters, the Brethren are an apocalyptic offshoot of the 70s Jesus movement, eschewing worldly possessions and earthly pleasures to purify themselves for the coming end of the world. Brethren members essentially live as vagrants, doing odd jobs to survive and eating trash, avoiding bathing and medical treatment, and giving whatever money they do make to the group. They also forbid dancing and laughing until the return of Jesus, ban members from communicating with family members, and forbid same-sex contact. Group founder Jim Roberts died in December 2015, leaving the future of the secretive cult unclear. An offshoot of Mormonism that's constantly in the news for many unsavoury reasons, FLDS openly embraced polygamy, which the mainstream LDS group outlawed a century ago. The group has anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 members in rural Utah and in Arizona, with the group having almost total control of 2 small linked border towns in the 2 states. The FLDS was incorporated in 1991 by a group of men who had been excommunicated by the church. They went for a range of leaders who declared themselves prophets until being taken over by Rulon Jeffs in 2002. He died shortly after, and his son Warren Jeffs took over. It was under Warren that the FLDS practices of child marriages, bigamy, incest, racism, the abandonment of teenage boys, and child abuse all became public knowledge. Warren Jeffs was sent to prison in 2007 but continues to lead the church, while his successors argue and squabble for power.